Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey, hey, hey.
It's me, Daniel,
And it's been
on Spoiled Rotten.
on that shelf.
Excellent. We did it.
Boom. We got it.
It's Thor the Dark World. I really wanted to say Thor the Dork World.
The Dark World.
Yeah, it's the second Thor movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got things happening in it. I feel like this time I do have an in as to why I don't like it.
Oh yeah.
It's not even that I don't like. I actively dislike it. I think because I actually like for the first 10 minutes was like, I don't mind this. Like, I think I like this movie, and then I was like, oh yeah, the ending. And I think it's because we know it's not. We know that it's not actually concluding because we've seen the other movies. But if you were to watch this the first time, the emotional payoff happens, and then they're like, and now let's do another act of the movie.
Yeah.
So like all that stuff with the portals on Earth, I was just like, I don't care. Like everything, I cared about up until this point has concluded.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things about this movie is the disconnect between the enemy and the lack of empathy between the Dark Elves. Like it's just like,
yeah, you don't care about the Dark Elves.
Nobody cares about the Dark Elves, really. It's just like, oh, cool, you guys look cool. That's largely it. But like, it's not as compelling as, you know, like an alien race like Ronan, and the Accuser, and like what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. It's not that you like feel for Ronan, you're obviously not supposed to, but it's just like the idea of like, oh, you can sense the frustration there. Versus the Dark Elves, it's completely detached from that, and there's no frustration. It's just like, oh, you guys want power again. Cool.
Well, I think I
understand why it's a very clear-cut way to take you guys down, you know.
I would say with Ronan, he's also a very forgettable bad guy, but he's also in an origin movie, so like you can afford to not have that great of a villain, because like the fun, and I feel like Marvel has always done this, is that like you're there for the hero, like you're there to celebrate the hero. So it is like, realistically, it's just how is that family going to come together and save the day. Whereas Thor the Dark World is a sequel, so we're kind of like, yeah, like we do need this villain to be something, like it needs to challenge something. And I think you're right, like you're kind of just like, okay, they just want the world to be dark, but like I don't care. Like he's not even a sympathetic character within his like group, because he just sacrificed, like the beginning of the movie, he sacrifices like, not all obviously, but a lot of his own people to be like, well, they can die so that we can live later. And it's like, yeah, like I don't even feel like he cares about his people at that point.
It's not even like a Thanos moment. Yeah, it's not even like a Thanos moment where you're like, oh, you're the Mad Titan, you recommended this plan to maintain life and all that kind of stuff, and you weren't listened to, and now you're like pissed off about it. Like that tracks so much more than this. It's just like, okay, well, this is just like heartless in the sense where you're not even trying to justify any good. You're just being like, yeah, like fuck those guys. We're gonna survive for ourselves, and we're gonna come to power, and then we're gonna take over the world the way. It's a very, very clear cut. No, this is just basically evil. There's no like evil, but spin on this.
He's evil. There's no doubt about it, and he kills. Curse kills Frigga. Like, so you care a bit for that moment, but as I said, like you get that payoff, and then they try to tack on a new act of the movie, because it's like they kill Cursed and like in the same way that he killed Frigga. So you're like, good, like we have got the payoff to the, like we've got the revenge we needed. It's like, it's the poetic thing. So like it all works, in addition to stuff we'll get into later. But I was just like, but then you still have to go back to Earth, and I feel like I don't care. Like, couldn't you have just killed him?
Oh yeah, by the time we get back to Earth, nobody cares.
Yeah,
nobody cares when we're back to Earth. It's just like, oh right.
And I think it's because you don't care about Malekith as a character. Like you don't like, oh no, like what's he gonna do?
No,
it's like he didn't even do the big thing that we care about, which is killing Thor and Loki's mother. Like he didn't do that. He's in the room, but he didn't kill her. And he gets injured and actually has to go and like heal after his fight with Frigga. So you're just kind of like, yeah, like I don't care about him. He doesn't seem like a physical threat. He doesn't seem. It
didn't seem like an intellectual threat either, because
it's just like I just want things to be dark. And
you're absolutely right. That Rene Russo, like the killing of the mom thing, should have been him, in the sense where if he's like, no, I'm really sticking it to the Asgardians and I'm taking everything away from them. This is like personal for me. He doesn't even do the stuff that you're expecting him to do, right? He doesn't.
He doesn't.
You're just like, okay, the most effective thing that you could do right now is kill Thor's mom in front of Thor. That is the most effective thing. And he can't do that. And so every motivation is just like, okay, you just want darkness. That's it. It's a singular motivation, which ends up making this movie more about the characters themselves. So it ends up being, in a way, it ends up being about the Asgardians themselves, which to me is, whether or not I don't think this movie works too well in that category. I think it works well to study each character individually, but not cohesively together. Like, I think I get a really good sense of Loki in this, his complexities. I get a good sense of Thor and his complexities in this. I don't get a sense of everything together.
I do. I think it's about the family unit, right? Like this is, it is continuing from the first movie where it's like, yeah, Loki knows he's not really part of the family. And it doesn't help that when he gets back there, his father figure, I know he keeps saying he's not my dad, but like I even like that moment where he's like, you're not my dad, and like he even says to his mom, like, you're not my mom. And I feel like you can see how that takes a toll on him, is that like the next time he knows about his mom, she's dead, and he's like, well, the last thing I said was she's not my mom. Like you could see that stuff, and it is how he fits into this family unit. But I do think they do a good job of showing Thor like that. There's that moment where he's like, well, you put me in the dungeon, and he like grabs Loki. Like, you know damn well who put you in that dungeon. And like it's that frustration he has of like, I just wish you would be my brother. Like, why can't you just be my brother? You do all this bullshit and you've caused us to
stop
like treat you poorly. You
exactly. It's like, stop being selfish and take some responsibility for your actions, because that's the reality of it. Like everyone calls him out on his mom does that too. It's like, I've tried to make this as comfortable as possible, and then he snipes back at her. He's like, well, you know damn well who did that. And it's like purely referring to him. It's just like, absolutely. Yeah, but the one thing I do like that he points out, and this is what I think is really, really become interesting about the Thor franchise to me, is that if I'm looking at the Thor franchise, and if I'm looking at Thor as a character pushing back on aspects of colonization, then I like the character much, much more, because like there's aspects of this movie where Loki's like, you've killed hundreds of, like his mom's like, you've killed hundreds of people, and then Loki rightfully says back, that's like a drop in the bucket compared to what Odin's done, and you guys celebrate what he's done and you condemn me for what I've done. What the hell? It just seems like, from a colonization standpoint, it's like, if you're not successful at it, you're gonna get fucked over by everyone, right? And like from a colonization standpoint, Thor's like, yeah, I'm not the king. I'm the one to defend. I'm the one to do this. But I'm not the one to lead. I'm not the one to impose wills and all that kind of stuff. It's a very, very interesting. Like, looking at it from that lens, I'm a little bit more interested in this franchise, and I'm a little bit more interested in the character of Thor. But
I think they pay it off in Ragnarok. Like they pay off that pushback against colonization, or at least it's so obvious in Ragnarok, like you can't ignore it. Like I feel like we see that they've been building, and who knows how much of that is intentional, but I do feel like it's there. It's very palpably there that they are highlighting that, like, even if you only look at it as Odin, like these nations that feel like they know what's best for everyone else, going around and conquering, and then turning around and be like, well, look at how many people they killed. And then it's like, in this movie, Loki's like, I mean, you guys have killed way more than I have. You're like,
and you guys are celebrated. You guys have birthdays, whatever, right?
So I do think it's there, and I that's why I'm saying I think it all works. It just, when you get to it's the fact that they went back to Earth to do the portal thing. I mean, there's stuff in the middle that I don't like, but I feel like if the movie actually ended on wherever, I don't know where they are, like one of those wherever the realm is where they do their trick where they fake cut off Thor's hand and all that. If it ended there, I feel like that would have been a better place. Like kill him on that planet or whatever. Like we don't need to feel like, okay, and now we're gonna do another, like I think when that happens, there's still 40 minutes left in the movie, and I felt like I thought this had gone on for 2.5 hours. Like, it just like,
the movie certainly
so much more left, and it's under 2 hours. The movie is under 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a short movie, relatively speaking. Yeah. I mean, compared to a lot of other movies.
Like, why are we still doing this? Because we don't care about Malachi. Like, he's not a threat. So then it is all that stuff to do with the family. So you get correct. And I mean, I don't like it because then they're like, nah, he didn't really die. But it is like the two brothers finally work together. They trust each other. And then Loki dies. And so you're like, okay, like that's something Thor will have to deal with moving forward. But like, at least he got that somewhat closure with his brother that he just wanted. Like he did want to just like have adventures with. And got to work together for this movie. Mostly because he says like, how can I trust you? And he's like, well, you can trust my anger, which is the anger that our mom died. Like, and so it is like, okay, well, yeah, I can finally trust you on this one. Like, let's go. And so then that all plays out, and then they're like, but there's more to the movie, and you're like, oh no, I don't need that. I don't need any of that. But yeah, like I would say that's my big thing. I think that the movie has some good momentum at first. I feel like people always say they wasted, or Natalie Portman seems like she's on autopilot. I think she does after she gets the ether in her because they don't really give her much to do after that. But I feel like she's having, I mean, I know she wasn't having a good time, but like, I feel like that's why she's a good actor. I don't get that she's not having a good time at the beginning of it. Like, even when she's on the like table and they're operating on her and she's like, is that a whatever? And they're like, no, it's this. She's like, well, does it do this? And they're like, yeah. She's like, it's like stuff like that seems like she's having fun and like whatever she wants to be. Like I feel like she's in the movie. I don't look at that and go like, oh man, they must have really had to drag that out of her. It looks like she's having a good time, and like I enjoy all of the Jane Foster stuff up until she's like possessed by the ether. But like up until that point, I'm liking this. I think this is working.
It's one of those performances where you're like, okay, the rumors, the drama surrounding the actress affected our perception of the actual portrayal more.
And I didn't know that when I saw it the first time. I didn't know any of the rumors, me so I just thought she was having a better time.
I'm watching that. Yeah, I watched that this time around thinking of like, okay, where can you see Natalie Portman unhappy? And you're like, well, no, you're still going to be a professional at the end of the day, right? You're still going to show up. You're still going to do your job. You're going to do all those things. So when people are like, oh, you can see her, she's phoning it in here. I'm like, you're really projecting on that one.
Yeah.
But like is she putting in her best performance? Probably not. Definitely
but I feel
not.
Like she must compared to other performances. Considering she was there like under legal threat, I feel like that's a really good performance. And I feel like if you were to say like someone's phoning in, I'm like, I don't know, Idris Elba doesn't seem like he's having a good time.
Oh but, yeah, like, that would be the actor I'm saying would be phoning it in.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
would be Idris Elba.
But I feel like Natalie Portman is like invested. Like it feels to me that she's invested. I don't know. Like it seems like she's like, well, I have to be here, but like, here we go. Like let's do this. Because
I think the interesting thing about Natalie Portman is that you can't bring up Natalie Portman's involvement in this without bringing up her experiences in Star Wars, recognizing that after she was doing the prequel trilogy, no director wanted to work with her. No one wanted to work with her. And this is just the curse of Star Wars. And like the idea of like no one wanted to work with her. So she really had to like really up the professionalism game, up the ante for a lot of different things to get her perceived differently as a different kind of actor for people to take her seriously. And it worked. It really did work. And I think one of those things is that with that experience that she went through in Star Wars, she definitely brought that level of professionalism to this, even though she didn't want to do it. Even if she's like, okay, it's just a paycheck. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to celebrate this. I'm not going to do the media stuff afterwards, but I'm still going to do my job, right? It's not like a situation where you have like James Harden of the Houston Rockets, just like really just phoning it in just to really piss people off, to be like, no, get rid of me, trade me. I don't want to be here anymore. He's not doing stuff like she's not doing stuff like that. She's being a professional here. So whenever people be like, oh yeah, she's got a weak performance here, I'm like, she's not giving us an Oscar worthy performance, but that was never going to be the case in this movie. It's a weird discussion for people to project onto her. I'm just like, no, she did perfectly fine. I think she's done great with the movie that we see in front of us. It's not a stellar movie. I just want to touch on reality. I know we're not a sports thing, but like I never like comparing that situation of a yes, she is a woman, but she is a white woman with a lot of power, Natalie Portman, to a professional athlete, especially when they're black. There is a lot more going on there than just, hey, how come you're not shooting the hoops for us and everything. So my bringing that up was not to be not to undercut the racial undertones of that. I get really touchy about that kind of stuff because I feel like I think they own the athletes in that sense of like, hey, just shut up and play. That's not it, but it's a situation. There's a lot going on there. Yeah. There's a lot going on there, including the front office stuff, Daryl Morey stuff in the Houston situation. That was a very, very superficial comparison, and not to undercut the racial undertones. And that is insensitive on my part to bring that up in that way. But I think, I'm just going to apologize for that and move on. So yeah, in that situation, I don't think she's phoning it in. She's not like doing what it doesn't feel like. I want to think of I think there's other actors or actresses where you're like, that's more of a phone in performance than anything else. Like Johnny Depp in the fourth Pirates of the Caribbean is a phone in situation. Of people phoning stuff in, but I think I'm sure everyone knows this already, but that it was that Patty Jenkins was supposed to do this one, and correct. Patty Jenkins makes it seem like they didn't get that far into production, but the way I heard it was like they were about to start, and then they Natalie Portman didn't realize they'd switched to Alan Taylor and was kind of like, what the fuck? No, I don't want to do it then. Like, you're screwing over my friend. I don't want to do this. Was it pure protest on the fact that it's like, I didn't like Alan Taylor, or is it like, she just was like, why I don't like the way you treated my friend? Because Patty Jenkins is her friend, and like they did a movie together after. But like, or no, they didn't. Sorry, but like, they're friends, and that was her. Like, she was Patty Jenkins' champion to be like, all right, like we can do this, because I believe, and I don't know if this was Patty Jenkins' decision or not, but the villain was supposed to be Enchantress, not Malekith. And this was back in the Ike Perlmutter days, and he was like, well, it can't be a female villain because then no boys will buy the toys for the female villain. And then they switched it out. Right. So there's a bunch of stuff that they are still thinking that misogynistic bullshit back then. And I don't think this is the only reason why, but like you'll notice in Ragnarok, it is a female villain, and that was post Ike Perlmutter. Like you can start to see that they couldn't get Black Panther off the ground, they couldn't get Captain Marvel off the ground while Ike Perlmutter was there, because he's also the guy that was like, who cares? Just put Don Cheadle in. No one will know the difference. Like, this is why we need a changing of the guard. And again, I don't believe that like give a fuck about this shit. And I don't believe it can only be one person. I know he has a lot of control, but there also had to be a bunch of people like, yeah, I guess he's right. That to like execute these things that he's saying. Yeah, so yes, it's not just one person. The corporate structure side of things is so fucked up, because it's just like, it's not just one person, but ultimately it is one person, because it's just like the idea of the corporate structure of like, you don't want to piss off the person that's in charge for your own, like sacrifice your own career and all that kind of stuff. Don't martyr yourself for one thing that may not even go through. That is a very, I think that's the backstory. Life thing. Yeah, that's the backstory. Is that's why Natalie Portman was like, I don't want to do this, and then she didn't come back. I get that they were also kind of like, well, their relationship has kind of run its course, but the very real thing was like, yeah, fuck you guys. I'm not coming back if this is how we operate. And I agree. That's where I don't want to get into any more Patty Jenkins stuff. We already talked about it on Wonder Woman 1984. Yes, we did. So go check out that episode for shit. So all I'll say is, it would have been nice if she had that movie
I don't think it would have been 100% better, especially because, and I'm not saying because I don't like 1984. It's because this was still very much under the control of a different regime at Disney. This wasn't when Kevin Feige could spread his wings and be like, and again, we all know that it's still pretty put together beforehand, but like this was before they were letting people like Taika Waititi, Ryan Coogler, like have a voice
when they weren't so much micromanaging everyone. Because like
I think she basically said that's why I didn't want to do it. Like that's why Patty Jenkins didn't want to do it. She's like, well, no, I don't want to make your movie. I want to make my movie. So you can get someone else if this is what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, and this is one of the issues with storytelling at Marvel is the idea, and multiple directors have said this, right? They feel confined. They have to introduce story beats, even though like don't like it. I think James Gunn really was upset that he had to do the Thanos thing in the middle of like Guardians of the Galaxy, or just didn't like it, or protested, or whatever it was.
I think he only said that's the only thing that was forced on him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's ever. I don't think he's ever. I mean, if I were him, I would never complain about the system there, because look at the position.
He's got a lot of leeway.
I would never
complain.
For sure. So if he was upset at the time, I'm sure he's reframed it as, well, I guess that's the only thing they forced on me, because he has got a lot of power there, and they brought him back after firing him. So I don't know that he would ever vocalize it that way now. I'm sure at the time he probably was like,
I agree.
But I think
I agree. I feel like there's a certain amount of like learning behind the scenes to be like, hey, I'm pretty lucky to have this position again in this job and be the first person to do DC and Marvel stuff together and still have gainful employment at both studios or both
he
camps
can do whatever
or whatever
he wants at both, and they bring him in for stuff that he's not even like. He's still a producer on Thor: Love and Thunder. He's like a producer on Infinity War, Endgame. Like there's or maybe not Endgame because of the timing of it, but like he is he has a voice there. So I don't know if he's
he's got some input.
I don't think he's that.
No, he's not. And all he's got to do is just realistically in the public, he's gonna play that role of whatever. I genuinely hope he's changed from the kind of inappropriate jokes he's had in that controversy in the past, and we're not going to get into that. But like, it's one of those things where it's just like, you got to play that part in public as well. It's weird, but the micromanagement at Marvel, I think there's a distinct period of time, and I think Ike Perlmutter is his name. The moment he was not directly involved anymore was the moment the micromanagement stuff stopped really being a public criticism from the directors and a lot of different people. So I think a lot of what we see from the speed bumps, I guess, in phase 1 and 2 are primarily because they wanted too much involvement. Now they're backing off a lot more and giving a lot more control to people like Coogler, and I think that's amazing, because to me, Black Panther, if it was done with Perlmutter, like trying to pull puppet strings behind the, I'd be like, no, that would have been the worst thing in the world. It would have been terrible. Just because you have a white guy just basically telling people of color how to do their jobs. And I'm like, that's the problem, buddy. You just go over there. Stop. So I like his non-involvement going forward. It's a richer MCU after his departure.
100%.
Sure.
But back to this movie. I think, the only thing I knew before seeing it was that Alan Tidler was like, fuck them and their stupid post-credit scene. I didn't film it and I'm not coming back. And I was just like, well, that's a bad thing to know before going into a movie, is that the director's like, I'm not coming back. And I'm like, what? You're volunteering that information? Okay, I could only imagine. And I feel like that did color like how I felt about the movie. I was just like, I guess, I don't know, like this isn't that great. But I do think that the beginning of it is good. I feel like there's some good momentum. Like they still have the humor in it, and I do like that they're going deeper with, again, how Loki affects that family. I think that is the saving grace of the first two movies. There's a lot to like in the third movie, and there's still the Loki's effect on that family in the third movie, but it is basically the only thing the first two movies have going for it for me, is that like
I agree
that you feel something because of Loki's involvement in this family and what that means for everybody involved. Like you get more insight into his mother's feelings in this. And I do really love the last thing he says to his mom is, "You're not my mother." Like that he does it in a petulant way, but then you really see like, or at least for me, I feel like that affects him for the rest of the movie, that he's just like, why did I do that?
Oh, it totally does. I mean, the idea of like, he did it just to be Loki, just to make a point and all that kind of stuff. It was like, well, if Odin's not your dad, then does that make me not your mom? And he's like, well, yeah, 100%. And like, you can tell, like, after she leaves, he's like regretting every part of that. But it's one of those weird things where it's like, do you feel he said that so he's like, hey, don't come visit me anymore, so you can get me out of your mind, move on, so you can move on, like in like that kind of stuff? Or genuinely he's just like, no, I have to be consistent here because like there's evil dudes like Thanos that are watching what I say now and all that kind of stuff, you know? I have no idea, but it's a very interesting.
I think he just was being a petulant kid in that moment. Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. I agree, because like even that whole discussion with him and Odin in the beginning of the movie, I thought was absolutely fascinating. The idea was like, it's my birthright to be king. And then Odin just shoots back. It's like, it was your actual birthright to die alone. I changed all that and gave you this. So yeah, you were told that, but reality, like, really, come on, man. and like that
and I think that's what I was saying during the Avengers episode. I was like, he keeps saying it's his birthright, but it isn't his birth. Like,
well, he thinks it's his birthright.
But I don't know where
he's entitled to
from.
it. He's privileged to it. Oh, it's entitlement and privilege. I mean, that must come with being like a king or whatever over Asgard and having that position.
No,
right?
What I'm saying is, it makes sense if he thinks that, but sorry, it makes sense if he thinks that, but the movies are so desperately trying to show you that he's well aware that that's not his right and that he feels dumped on by his family. So I'm like, how does he hold those two things? Like, sure, like people are confusing and but if we're talking about movies and storytelling, wouldn't it make sense to just commit to one? Like, it seems weird that he keeps holding both as true in his head. And I get it that that's a real thing that can happen, but it just feels like, to smooth things out, it feels like, especially the way they want to play him as this like anti-hero underdog most of the time, other than the first Avengers movie, it makes more sense for him to be like, you guys have lied to me and this is why I'm acting out, as opposed to I deserve to be king, this was my birthright. It's like, well, no, like, you just realized you were stolen away from your home and these people are still trying to keep you lower status.
It's I mean, the Loki stuff is, you're right, he never truly had claim to the throne, but in his mind he did, and that's what it is. It's pure delusions on his part, right? Or I don't know if it's delusions or him just being like, no, I'm still gonna try to get what I was promised and all this kind of stuff. But even then, like, I have to say this, even if he was like actually gonna get the throne, he's the younger brother. He was always going to watch Thor get the throne before him. Is that
this is what I'm saying.
I'm imagining that's how Asgardian monarchy works. It'd be like Prince Harry being like to Prince William, like, what the fuck, dude? I was supposed to be king. Obviously, he quit the family. I didn't know you can actually do that. But that's a situation where, like, if Prince Harry, like back when he was a prince, started complaining and being like that, it's like, dude, you're the younger brother. You only get the throne if he dies first. You know what I mean? It's just like one of those things. Like, that's my assumption of how Asgardian monarchies work. Anyways,
right?
But
so there's that. So I think that's what works is Loki, his actions and how it stresses out his family or like breaks them apart. And I really do like Thor's reaction in this movie of like, I'm done like joking around about this. Fuck you for what you've done.
I like that. He's like, nope, there's the one thing that was keeping you safe was that there was hope. Now there is no hope. I will not hesitate to kill you whatsoever. I like that discussion, but obviously he doesn't follow through on that.
No, he loves him. Like, that's the thing, is that, like,
he loves him.
I think it's a great, I've always said I like the Thor character. I just didn't like any of his movies until Ragnarok.
I agree. And the reason why is just because like every time it's just, and I guess this is why the Ragnarok works so well, is because every single movie's trying to put him in a serious situation. And that's one thing I do love about this movie is like toward the end where he finally gives up the throne, he's like, no, it's not going to be me. That's when it's like, oh, okay, now we're actually like Thor's being true to himself and all this kind of stuff. It's great now. But you know, it took 2 movies to get here, and it's tricky.
I would say it's more that they put him in bland situations than it is serious, because like Ragnarok is still serious. It's him trying to avoid his whole like race of people
Ragnarok altogether.
Yeah. So it's still the end of days thing. It's just they're not
very serious.
Like it's a colorful, more fun-loving thing, but it is still like, again, the movie ends with him being face to face with Thanos. So it's not like it doesn't end on a like, yay.
Happy.
It's like,
you're right.
And like I think you even talked about
it ends with Sorry, go on.
I think you even talked about when we reviewed it. Like you're like he thinks he saved them, but he just put them right in front of like death's door.
Yeah. He just moved them from one area to another. That's it. He didn't really, and you know, and of course Endgame does a perfect exploration of him dealing with that PTSD of like, I didn't save anything. I was like, I gave up the throne to try to save Asgard, and I couldn't even do that. And he kept failing. Like the amount of trauma that he suffered by the end of Endgame is absolutely incredible, right? Especially because he was so close to actually saving the world. It's like the idea of Thanos being like, you should have gone for the head, that must have traumatized the hell out of him. So the idea, like, you're right, he's always in serious situations. What I meant by serious situations is whether or not formal situations, I think, is a better way of putting it, because like when he's in Asgard, he has to be formal, right? He's the prince of Asgard or whatever next to throne. He has to act a certain way, even though he doesn't.
I think it's actually the opposite. I think Asgard's where he can really relax. It's just in this movie he's upset about Jane Foster, but it's in Asgard that he can be like, they just keep talking about how much he celebrates and has a good time in Asgard after he fights people.
That's true.
I think it's just I think it's just the movies are bland. Like
that's true.
Oh, you're going up against Malekith, great. Like, who cares? Or in the first movie, it's like, oh, you're in New Mexico and you can't do anything. It's just kind of like, it's just bland situations. At least this movie has more of like an adventure feel to it. It doesn't succeed realistically, but that's what I'm saying. I can still hold on to the family dynamic stuff as being good in this, but like. The one thing I think this improves on is like you don't feel as claustrophobic as like the first movie, where it's like, oh, we're just on this basically like block of a place in New Mexico.
Yes.
This one is like, no, we're like
the first
around,
movie
we're
feels
going
like
places.
A bottle episode.
Yeah, like even being in London feels more expansive. Like it looks like real, and like so like that stuff works. It's just you're ultimately like, but I don't really like care what he's doing. It's just visually more engaging, I guess. And then you get Ragnarok, where it's like more characters are interesting, and I mean, most of his movies are just like he goes to Earth, but then something happens on Asgard and he has to deal with it. So like that's the same thing here. It's just Hela is a good villain because again they worked it into the family. So it is still expanding on what works from the first 2 movies. And then and I don't know, like I feel like it would be good to revisit even the movies we've already done on the thing, but let's not talk too much about Ragnarok. I just think that like the problem is he's just put in bland situations until Ragnarok.
I mean, that is fair. And that's the thing I hate about Thor is like every opportunity he gets to have fun, he has so much fun, and it's so much fun to watch him have fun. Like Thor 1, when he's celebrating the win from the Frost Giants and all that kind of stuff, and he's going to Odin and like everyone's celebrating, he's having a time of his life. Like he's
even having a time of life when he fights, like when he beats the first Frost Giant and he's like, who's next, or like is that all you got, like stuff like that. You're like, oh, like that's what I'm saying, like he's been a consistent character in that sense. It's just he's never been around other fun people so that he can like
that's the problem. It's his situation around him always forces him to be some sort of formal or some sort of seriousness that it's just like, no, I want to see the Thor where it's like he'll sit down with Doctor Strange and chug the entire beer and all that kind of stuff, and oh, I'm gonna don't forget your umbrella, oh sorry, that to me is so much fun. I'm like, that's the Thor I want to see. And that's the Thor that's great, because I don't like the formal Thor where he's just talking in Odin talk or whatever it is. And it's just like too serious. It's too monotone, right? But the Thor they actually give us is fantastic. And I want more of that. And I guess it's a great point, like for him to be like, no, I'm not taking the throne. And then Ragnarok is what it is. I'm like, okay, cool. That to me is goodbye formal boring Thor, or we're definitely putting Thor in more fun situations now, because no one's having fun in this movie. That's a problem with it. No one's having fun except for Darcy, maybe. Yeah, but she's always doing the same thing, like every single movie. Yeah, she's the only one that's having a good time. Everyone else is like, oh, that sucks. Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't like seeing Selvig again. I was like, ugh, can't he just not be in this? Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, you're still there. You're frozen on the screen. Okay, there we go. Yep. Yeah, I was just like, oh, Selvig, what a guy.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess they just really like that actor. So Stellan Skarsgård, like, I guess if he's agreeing to come back, you might as well use him. But I think we talked about it in the first Thor. I would rather Jane Foster get more to do.
Yep. Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, this is I guess Darcy kind of isn't I mean, it's weird because we're recording this while WandaVision is out, and it's like, yeah, like it's great to see Darcy again because she's progressed in her life. But yeah, this one just felt like, all right, like how can we put her in to make more jokes?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, there's nothing to talk about with the villains. The Warriors 3 don't get anything to do this time either. I guess they're really only in the first.
What I will say is, and so one thing I do like about they're not really in this one at all. They're not really in this at all.
Sif is more used as like a romantic thing, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, and not successfully. To me, the whole movie is about. Well, it should be about Thor's future, who he's going to choose, Jane Foster for the throne or Lady Sif for the throne and all this kind of stuff. But the movie doesn't successfully do that to me. It doesn't successfully tell me that he's in inner turmoil trying to choose between the two.
He isn't. That's why.
It's very clearly, he's not. He's clearly Team Jane Foster. And everyone else is like, no, we're not going to like that because she's going to die in like a weekend compared to our 5,000 year life kind of thing on the throne. So you can't give it to her. She's not of this world. She doesn't know our ways and all this kind of stuff. And it's very, very xenophobic monarchy stuff in regards to the throne, obviously, which is why he rejects it. And the thing I do like about Thor in this is like he's got like moments throughout this whole movie where he rejects the ideals of colonization. So the idea of like, so for example, and this never really occurred to me, but the character like what he does with what's his face, one of the Hogun, the Asian Warrior 3, where they're basically there to defend his home
Vanaheim or something.
Planet of Vanaheim, and basically Thor's like, go be with your people, to go do this and all this kind of stuff. So Thor's like already like to me, I'm like, okay, Hogun, why is he there? Oh, it's probably a result of colonization, like all this kind of stuff that he's he's now working for
comics,
Asgard. I don't know.
He's just from Asgard, which is weird.
Is he really?
Yeah, like
that's so
I feel
weird.
like that's
why
just them being weird.
Then?
I feel like that's just them being like, well, we already put Idris Elba in there. There can't be too many like multicultural people.
Yeah, there can't be too many people of color in fucking.
Yeah, I don't like that.
Like Asgard.
I was afraid you were going to go down that path, and I was like, That's not.
Oh, I'm not. No.
No, I mean, I was afraid you could talk about like, oh, it's like this is a positive that he's like working with someone. I'm like, nah, this is no good.
Oh no, not a positive whatsoever. It's a result of colonization to me. It's just like, oh, it's another Loki situation where it's like, oh, were you taken from your home too, and then forced to fight in this Warriors 3, and then knowing that you have a home planet and that you're not allowed to return to, but now you've been given, like Thor is now being like, you need to be here.
I don't think that's what they were doing.
We're releasing you from that.
I don't think that's what they were doing. I think they were just like, oh,
gotcha.
like let's just make him from another place. That's why he doesn't look white. And I was just like, oh, that's a bad idea. Because I get the sense he can freely go back whenever he wants.
Oh, I didn't get that sense. I thought he was very, very much. You have to be. You're on our team. You have
the only reason
we
Thor gives him permission to stay was just like, oh, like you don't have to worry about like hanging out with the Warriors 3. Like you can stay with your people if that's what you want to do right now. I think that again, it's all problematic because they're trying to solve a problem they didn't ever need to create, like which was making Hogan from somewhere else. It's like no, he was just an Asgardian. Like they were just trying to like
they were just trying to make Asgard very, very white and trying to reflect, I guess, that like Viking.
But they're aliens,
Norse
so
kind of thing. Exactly, which is like, why would you choose to do that part of Norse mythology where there was a lot of like raping, pillage, all that kind of stuff? Like, and it's just you're right, it's absolutely weird and hugely problematic. One of the things that I wanted to mention that I wanted to talk about in this movie was Frigga, Rene Russo. For some reason, and I think it's just my dislike towards the Thor movies, but never realized how much she actually gets to do. You know what I mean? Like the fact that she in this, like I always thought that in
she had a bigger
she
fight
gets
scene.
The most.
Yeah,
I thought she had a bigger fight scene, but the fact that she chooses to go down fighting herself is like awesome. But the fact like she's the point of so many emotional things in this movie and everything like that. I'm like, this is great. I don't know why I had the idea that like, oh, Endgame is the like when Thor goes back to speak to his mom and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh, that's the best like time interaction they've ever used Frigga. I don't know why I thought that, because I'm like, they use her very effectively here. She's very fantastic.
Like, I wish she had more to do, but yes, I
absolutely wish she had more. Yeah, she's great in this one. Only because, sure. But this is
it would be nice
things.
if she had more stuff to do with Loki. Like, if they wanted to have that runtime, like you could just extend the stuff with her and Loki throughout the movie, and then I basically all I'm trying to do is eat up time so that we don't have to go back to London and have that dumb portal fight that I don't care about.
Yeah. Especially because I'm like, why do you go back to London? You make it very clear that the 9 realms are going to align. So you could have been at any one of the 9 realms.
And to be honest with you, it's probably because they already filmed the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode where they clean up after that fight.
It's probably because of that.
They needed somewhere on Earth, and they're like, well, we already have this set, or we already have this location we can film. I think that's why.
Yeah. That I guess that's fair, but I guess they still have to bring some sort of grounding to Earth to make us care, because at that point they hadn't established the cosmic multiverse and different planets as much as successfully yet. I mean, we're waiting for Guardians of the Galaxy to really do that. So yeah.
But yeah, I think, you're right. The Frigga stuff is good in this. I just wish she had more. And I was happy she got a fight scene. That was really cool.
I think one of the very, very interesting things about this movie is that how from a visual standpoint they're starting to do really, really weird things, and to me I'm just like, is this their way of like experimenting with camera angles or shots and effects to really look at stuff for what the multiverse could look like in Doctor Strange and Dormammu and all that kind of stuff, right? Because it does bring back like some shots for me. I'm like, that seems like something that Doctor Strange would do. You know what I mean? Or a shot that would be in a Doctor Strange movie. I don't know if it was anything like that or just the filmmaker was like, I'm going to use this shot instead. But it kind of like, I had that thought when watching this movie for some reason. Don't know why.
Yeah, I didn't feel that, but I'm not saying it's not there. It just wasn't a thought of mine.
Yeah, that was just a random thought that came through.
I had I was listening to another podcast and they talked about how this was the first, technically, like the first spaceship in a Marvel movie. Because in Avengers, those were just living beings, like the whales that came out, and then otherwise they're using like shield tech. And I was like, that is interesting that Thor gave us the first spaceship in a Thor movie gave us the first spaceship, realistically. So I thought that's where you were going, was like they were testing things out of like how much are people willing to like buy into for this, because I would imagine at this point they know that Guardians is coming.
No, I just thought it was like different ways of subtly trying to set up different things to get the audience used to these kind of things of like mysticism, teleportations, different realms, and all that kind of stuff. And
I think that's kind of, they confirm, if you stay for the post credits, but like they confirm that this is we're talking about Infinity Stones now, like that.
Yes,
I do feel like there is some stuff in here that's laying the track for where they're going.
Yeah, because up until now, we still didn't really get any indication that we're dealing with Infinity Stones, except for like comic lovers like us, where we're like, Thanos, that means Infinity Gauntlet, that means Infinity Stones, and then everyone started looking. We didn't realize
we'd already seen two of them with the Tesseract and Loki's scepter, and then this movie says, like,
and then now the
ether, like they don't say Infinity Stone in that moment, but they're like the other 5 are like I don't remember how many there are, but like it was like the other
6 stones.
So they said the other 5 are solid, but not this one. It's different. So then you get the idea. Like,
I think that was a very
like, are they? And then in the last scene, they're like, well, we already have the Tesseract, so it's not smart to have 2 Infinity Stones in one spot. So they name it, like they set it up in the movie, and then they like confirm. But they must have known it was,
I think,
Guardians of the Galaxy, because they put what's his face in the post credits. So I do think they were trying to layer in some stuff for people to be like, I guess this is where we're going.
Yeah, I think the very, very interesting thing about, and I wanted, because I rewatched that dark elf scene, or not dark elf scene, the scene where Odin explains everything and all that kind of stuff, where Thor's like, oh, the stories mom used to tell us as kids and all this kind of stuff. I rewatched that, and I think the explanation was very, very interesting, that they dropped the hint there that like the other 5 were stones. And I'm like, that's something like now I look back, I'm like, I see what you guys are doing. If we didn't stay to the end scene, we wouldn't have had that confirmation. But the end scene, like that is a small little nugget that gets confirmed in the end scene, that it is, we are dealing with Infinity Stones. But I think the very interesting thing about that is the difference of how Wong explains how the Infinity Stones were created, and how the Dark Elves explain how the Power Stone was created, or the Ether was created. I think it's very, very interesting how there's like different stories. Obviously, there's going to be different stories. There's different populations, different cultures looking and interpreting the power of the stones, right? So there's going to be different stories, but I thought it was very, very interesting in like dark elf lore, how the stone was created, or like the ether was created, and then it was the other 5 stones took a physical form of a stone. I think that was very, very cool.
Yep, I never really understood it, but
I just liked it. It was, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, this is cool. I like it. I like seeing evidence of other cultures interpreting things differently.
I just like it in Endgame where he's like, you keep calling it a stone, it's more of like a sludge. So you'll have to amend that.
Yeah. Who's that? Tony says that, right?
No, that's Thor.
Oh, that's Thor? Okay. Oh, right. Where he puts in the eye drops. It's like, oh, the ether, it's kind of like this. That was fun. It's like,
it went into my girlfriend. We're not even together anymore, so I guess nothing lasts forever.
Oh, Thor's so good in that movie.
He's great in both Infinity War and Endgame. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think there's ever like a bad time with Thor other than that hot tub scene. Like, I feel like he's a great character. Just unfortunate that he only got one out of the 3 good movies.
Did you see the hot tub scene?
Yeah, I hate that scene.
Referring to the Ultron scene where he's in
Age of Ultron. I don't like
the hot tub scene.
It's
I like
the only time
I'm
like, oh, get rid of this.
Yeah, like, that is dumb. Because I'm like, for them, I'm like, okay, if you're gonna leave that in, fully leave it in. Don't cut like the essential part away from it. Like, because that scene is actually really, really good. It's just they cut too much out from it. So it's just like nonsensical. Really?
Yeah, I kind of like it. I don't think there's any. Man, it's no good. I
guess we'll see when we get there and rewatch Ultron.
Yep.
Good fun. Yep.
So, what else happens in this movie? Yeah, I guess I'll get to. I don't like that they're like, he died. Just kidding. He's back as Odin. Which in Ragnarok we realize it means that he cast Odin down to Earth and put him in a retirement home or a psych ward. I can't remember what he did, but
retirement home or something like that, or let's call it a long-term care facility.
Yes,
just do that.
So he sent him away, and I'm like, okay, like it just. I was just
so
like,
to me, that's a very interesting thing.
Does he die in every Thor movie but Ragnarok?
Loki?
Yeah, he dies in the first one and he dies in this one. And then it's always like, nah, just kidding. And I think that's my confusion. Is like, why? Like, why? Like, why did they go to that well?
Well, I
mean, this is what I like about Ragnarok is they don't go to that well again. Nah,
yeah. The thing I like about the thing I liked about like Endgame or Infinity War, Infinity War was like no more tricks this time, and I'm like,
more resurrections,
no more resurrections this time. I'm like, the next movie you just commit to bring him back anyways.
It's not a resurrection, though. He is dead.
Yeah, it's not a resurrection. It's just pulling from different timelines.
That version of Loki is dead. So realistically, what they're doing is they got the most evil Loki to just keep going.
We have unevolved Loki going forward and working with the Time Force now with Luke Wilson. Or is it Owen Wilson? It's Owen Wilson, right?
It's definitely
Owen Wilson. That's right. I was watching Idiocracy the other day. That's why.
So I mean, Thanos is right in that sense of like that one died, but I get that people might not see that nuance of like it is a different Loki that we'll be seeing.
It's just one of those things where I'm like, I get that Thanos is technically right in that moment, but hey, it is what it is. But that's the great thing about this. This world, right, is if it's in comic book worlds, if we have good enough characters, we can find ways to bring them back.
I think more what I'm saying is that like each movie undercuts his death by up until this point. That's what I'm saying. Why are we going back to this well of like, nah, he's not dead, and it's like, you did that last time. Like, okay, I guess so. Then what do I care if he dies again? So not a fan of that, but other than that, it's still, if I ignore what happens even later in the movie, when he dies, it is effective because it is like, I mean, Thor would have loved to keep going with his brother.
Yeah, because I feel like
it's a true loss for him.
It's one of those situations where if Loki didn't die after that battle and didn't commit to tricking Thor, you could actually see Thor giving him another chance to be like, okay, this is what we should do. And then and I love what he says by the end of Ragnarok, like during Ragnarok, it was like, listen, man, you haven't been my brother for quite some time now. It's clear that you're going to be you and I'm going to be me. So I think this place is perfect for you. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to keep trying to do this. At the end of this, let's go our separate ways and all this. Like he's saying that not with anger in this one. He's like, no, this time I will kill you. That next time he's like, listen, I've just given up. I'm showing you indifference towards what I actually feel, but I'm objectively holding you like this is what your thing is. But also at the end of Ragnarok too is
let's
like,
stop
listen,
talking about Ragnarok. That should be the last thing of Ragnarok.
Yeah. Okay, fair. I'm not going to talk about Ragnarok.
No, finish your thought. I just want to say like I want to talk more about this.
So the idea of like, okay, by the time he's like, okay, well, we see that if you actually are in power, you're just going to be hedonistic as opposed to like vengeful and like a Thanos. You just want to have like a party and just keep partying and not care about anything else. Yeah, that's not going to hurt anyone. You're just in the perfect world to do that. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. But like I feel really bad for Thor because you can tell Thor just wants his brother back. He really does want his brother back. And it's just like, and his Loki's making it impossible for that to happen. Because like on some level, you're like, good for you, Thor. Put up your boundaries. Don't take shit from him anymore. That's very healthy and not codependent whatsoever. You're like, this is great. But then, like, Loki, get your shit together, man. This is crap.
Like, yeah, because you can tell that Loki wants to be loved. He's not like,
but on his terms.
Yes,
that's the problem. He's like, you have to like me like this, otherwise it's not real love.
But he's not like Enchantress, where when we're sorry, he's not like Hela when you like their sister, where you get to her and she's like, no, I just need you all to do what I say. I don't really care how you feel about me, realistically, because I'll just kill you.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, I like Hela's idea of like, no, sheep don't look, wolves don't concern themselves with the opinions of sheep, like that kind of mentality is like, no, I'm stronger than all of you. Odin's gone, so I'm rightfully next in throne. Why the fuck do I care as the queen of Asgard about what you guys think? That's stupid.
Yeah, like she's like, you could be in awe of me, but if you don't like me, like as long as you're doing what I say, like it doesn't matter to me. Whereas like, and you do see that a bit in Avengers of Loki being like, bow to me, like kneel, because he does want the genuine admiration.
Yes, he wants approval too.
Yes, yeah. So I think that all stays consistent for the most part.
Yeah.
And in this movie, he doesn't necessarily deal with that because it's mostly about him, just his immediate reaction to the events of Thor and Avengers, which is like, wait. So I'm not a part of this family, and like you're putting me in jail for trying to do what the family business is anyway. So fuck you guys.
Yeah. It's just like his thing is just like, hey, I'm doing what you guys wanted to do. I'm just doing it my way. Yeah. And then the rest of the family, they're like, yeah, I mean, you can do these things, but you have to do it our way, which is fucked up because it's just like, yeah, colonization's okay, but you have to do it like this. I'm like, fuck, that's fucked up, man. That's really fucked up. It's super fucked up.
But I think it's interesting. It makes it interesting, like even in a movie like this, where I think overall I feel bored, and like the symptom is like that last act they have, but like overall it's boring. But I do feel that there is genuinely interesting things in it, like you brought up, like Loki's pushback against the family business, and even Thor, like at the end where he's kind of like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this, even if you like, he doesn't know he's talking to Loki, but like he's just like, even if you said like Jane can rule by my side, I'm not down for all of this, like I'm out. Like I just want to be with her, like that, because I think that is Thor's journey for this movie, is like he feels like he has to do something, and he basically gives himself permission, like he gave Hogan permission to like be with the people he cares about.
Correct.
He's kind of just like, no, I don't really like you guys can keep doing this, I guess. Like I want to be happy, so I want to be with Jane.
Yeah, I like the words he says. Is like, I'd rather be a good man than some king or something like that. And I'm like,
he'd like, I'd rather be a good man than a great king or something. Which is like they kind of use that in Black Panther as well. Like it's hard for a good man to be a great king. Like it is, and I'm not saying like, oh, they copied. I'm just liking that MCU clearly has certain themes that go from different franchises.
Yeah, it's definitely not copying.
No,
if anyone was,
this is another version of that.
Yeah, it's a theme. Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful theme. It really is, because it's just like, question what came before you. if there's no good rationale for it, then there's something wrong with it, and something it needs to be done differently. So, and that's what I like about what the MCU is doing. It's just like Thor's questioning it. All these people are questioning it and all this kind of stuff. The standard way of what we've been spoon-fed propaganda our whole lives would be like, this is how you do it. I'm like, no, there's more than one way. That's it. There's more than one way. It's just whether or not you like the way I'm doing things is different.
I think we've done it. We
have successfully talked about this movie a lot more than I thought we would, to be perfectly honest.
Well, because I do think it's a more interesting movie than people give it credit for. It's just, it is saddled with a bunch of dopey stuff at the end, and as I said, I'm like the Eric Selvig stuff I could have lived without. I don't really need him.
I hesitate to say that it's a diamond in the rough, but there's definitely a lot. It definitely is not a diamond in the rough. It is. There's a lot more here from a writing standpoint that you gotta dig for and get, but there's more here than what you originally see. But is there more beyond that? I wouldn't say so.
I mean, I think it has some interesting stuff in there. But it doesn't ultimately come together for me. It's just there. It's not without its merit. It's not like, So let's rate it in that spirit. I'm
gonna give this a 6.
Wow, same mark. We both gave it a 6. It is a 6. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's not fine. It was good until they ruined it. But I was genuinely enjoying it, and then I was just like, all right.
Don't go to London again for the final fights.
I mean, we talked it to death. The villain choice was bad, and also seems like it came from a result of let's just swap. I mean, they obviously didn't just swap it out from Enchantress. They were just like, well, we didn't really build up to this, so I guess it's the Dark Elves. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the reality.
So there's that issue, but I think the movie is a 6. We both think it's a 6. There we go. Lovely.
I would have, you know what the thing I would have liked more is if the Dark Elves were more vocal about how unjust Odin's rule is, and they're fighting back against that. I'd be like, that would be interesting.
One thing I forgot to say was, it also doesn't help that they don't speak English for any of their formative scenes. They speak English once they're on Asgard, and I'm not saying that you have to be able to speak English for me to sympathize with you, but it's more just you're already put at a distance from them. You don't feel and it's not they're not speaking a real language anyway, so it's just so it's not even certain members of the audience are like, oh, I get it, you just need to read it, or it's just no one would know what they're talking about without the subtitles, and then it's oh, okay, it just they're the other. It doesn't feel like you're meant to feel anything for them if you're setting them up as the people that speak the other language.
No, I get what you're saying. All you're really and I agree with you. All it does is create more barriers that distance us from connecting with that, and it's important too. It really is. I'm not saying that we have to I understand why you're doing evil things or whatever, but it's just if we don't care at all about what the villains are doing and why they're doing them, then it just ends up being I want Thor to beat the crap out of that guy, and that's all you get out of
or you're who cares what happens with him? That's how I felt. I was I don't they already killed cares. The person that killed his mom. Who the fuck cares now?
Nobody cares.
It's over. It's stupid. He's done.
Literally no one cares about this, because it's just we have no connection, you have no justification for these things and all that kind of stuff. It's just if the Dark Elves were being the time for Odin's rule is over, it's time to free the 9 realms from the Asgardian rule, that's a very different thing. That's a very different, because all of a sudden you're why are you pushing back against Odin's rule? That's an interesting thing. Let's explore those politics, right? And then that's where Ronan does a better job of it. It's still disconnected, but it does a better job of it. And we'll get there when we get there. I'm being conscious now not to talk about other movies within the context of this one. But we'll get there when we get there. But this movie is just really wish they gave the Dark Elves a little bit more attention other than just, here's the linguistics department really flexing our muscle of like, we created a whole new alien language. Look how cool that is. I'm like, yeah, I get that that's cool, but things like Klingon already exist. You know what I like? It's possible, it's doable in the world of sci-fi. That's not the goal here. The goal was to get your audience to connect with your characters and your villains as much as your heroes. That would have been a more successful movie.
Agreed. All right. Yep. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Thank you very much. As Ben said, we are on That Shelf. We're part of the That Shelf podcast network. That means we're at the same home as Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels, Composers, No Budget Nightmare, What a Great Theme Song, and more. So please head on over there, and you can find our episodes, their episodes, and have a great time. If you'd like older episodes of our podcast, then you can go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. So yeah, those are all the different ways you can get in touch with us. And please, if you want to support the podcast, you can go to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all those places, and you can review, rate, subscribe, and share with your friends. That would be lovely if you could do that. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.